What's up, everybody? Sam Smyers here. Today, I want to show you make some of the sounds from $1 Million Baby by Tommy Richman. This song is going super viral on social media right now, so I figured I'd show you how to remake some of the sounds. So those are all the synth sounds. There's like a bass, there's these beep sounds that happen in the beginning, and then there are these keys. So I also put in there's a cowbell there because I was just playing around with the drums. That cowbell, I extracted the drums using a la, but that cowbell didn't come through. But that is just like an 808 cowbell that he uses as well. That you can find in Ableton's, just you go into their drums and type in like 808 cowbell and you can find that sample in there. So that's where that cowbell comes from. So let me go ahead and just start breaking down some of the sounds. I'll show you these beeps that happen in the beginning. I have them panning back and forth, and I'm just panning them using automation. And you can hear I've got this Valhalla vintage verb reverb. If I turn this off, then you can hear that beep sound, and it is just like a square wave beep, and I detuned it a bit just to fit the tuning of the song. And I'm using this saw around into square just to soften it a bit. The envelope one is just a really short, plucky envelope. So if I just let's play this on my keyboard. Just because it just is this really short beep sound. The filter, I'm using a band 12 filter. And I'm just using this for like EQing out the low end and the top end. So you can hear the difference there. And then I have on this diode 1 distortion. So there you can hear the difference with that distortion, just to make it like a bit more like a sample, I guess. That's kind of why I used the distortion, so it wasn't so clean sounding. And then my voicing's on mono because it's just kind of like could use this as like a cool beepy lead sound. And I did that panning back and forth just to try to match the panning of the song. Now let's get into the bass. Now the bass melody in the intro is different from the verse. And for this note here, let's play this again. You can hear this note doesn't have the pluck on it because I overlap them. And to do that, so if I play this on my keyboard now, let me play a note. If I play these two notes separately, you can hear that pluck sound, but if I play them and hold them out, you can just hear like that bass sound without the pluck. And I'm turning on the legato in Serum, and I'll show you how to do that. Because then in the verse progression, here's the MIDI. But I want to show this end part of this first part of the verse that I did. He kind of like plays around with bending the notes, and I just put on some automation on the envelope to do that. Just kind of like play around with bending the notes of that bass. So let's go into Serum and check this out. Now I kind of put in some other things in with the macro knobs, and this preset you can grab I have it in my Patreon right now. If you want to grab it and download it, you can go to my Patreon. But all I have is, I'm going to turn off the oscillator B because I'm not using that. I just have the oscillator A, which is a square wave. And you can see some movement with this square wave, and I'm doing that with this envelope 3 controlling the PWM, and then I have some noise on there. I have on a filter, some hyper, because it is a bit of a chorusy sound, and I'm using this hyper for the chorus sound. You could try and use a chorus. I just found that this hyper worked pretty well, and then I did some EQ. So let's go ahead and just, I'll go ahead and just try to remake this one from scratch so you can see how to make this one, because I think this is kind of like the main sound that I think is really cool in the track. So let's see if I can kind of remake this based upon the original one. So take down this octave to -2. And then I'll do a square wave, basic shapes, square wave, square wave. I had on this PWM. Let's go PWM. Take that up to about 75%. You can take down this randomness because it is a bass sound. I believe I had on the ARP white. So that is in here. Let me check that. What I had on the first one. ARP pink. And what is that level at? 32. Turn up that ARP pink. Envelope 1, I'll give this a tiny bit of release. Envelope 2, I'm going to use to assign to the filter. But let me do the envelope 3 right now. And I'll take down this release and the attack. Take down this decay to about there. And this is what I'm going to assign to the the envelope 3 to the PWM. Let me mute this noise. You can hear that like kind of distortion at the beginning. That's kind of what I'm doing to add a bit more impact to each of the initial attacks of the notes. So the modulation I'm going to set to about 10. And let's add that noise back on. Envelope 2 I will assign to the filter. So let's go ahead and just adjust this envelope 2. Zooming in there, going to give this kind of a curve. Let's see how that curve looks. Now the filter, I'm going to use like a 24 dB filter, and you can just test out, there's two of them in here, the main one's the MG Low 24, or this Low 24, and I found that the Low 24 sounded a bit closer to what I wanted for this sound. Then I'll take this envelope 2, assign it to the cutoff, hit Shift and Option so that the modulation only goes one way. I'll go ahead and adjust that. Raise up that drive a bit. Adjust this modulation. And then I want to do the legato. I want to turn that on because as I was showing you earlier, I overlapped some of the notes. So I wanted to pluck. See, I'm holding out those notes. I'm playing on my keyboard now. You can still hear like the bass low end happening because when you turn on this legato, it means that when I press a note, it's going to trigger this envelope 2, and it's going to keep triggering that envelope 2 if I hold down that first note and then hold down a second note. It's not going to like re-trigger the envelope. So I want to do that, and I want to turn on mono. Now after that, what you could do is you could try adding on some voices of unison. This is what I try to do to get it a bit wider. And that sounds pretty close too, but I just found that if I do one voice of unison and then add on the hyperdimension and do the 4 voices here, it sounds a bit more chorusy and not as wide, I think. And that's kind of more the effect that I wanted. And then from there, I'm just going to add a bit of low end EQ. So let's take down this frequency. And that's how you make that bass. And let's go ahead and listen to that first part 1 that I made. Yeah, so that sounds the same. Just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. So that's how you kind of make that bass sound. That is kind of like the main cool bass sound. I don't know what he used. Sounds kind of like probably a Juno. Like the Arturia has like some Juno synths you can use, and maybe it is based from there. And then the keys as well sound like something that would be from a Juno as well. These keys here. And this took me a while to figure out the chords. I don't think they're exactly right, but they sounded close enough. And that's kind of like the key to getting the keys to sound correct, is to getting the chords right. Because the sound itself was pretty simple. They're a bit wide sounding. If you do, so I put on this legato as well. I don't know if that's correct to do, because I have the mono turned off, and usually you do the legato turned on when you have the mono turned on. Because if I'm playing notes, like multiple notes, then you don't really need the legato, but I felt like there was some notes you'd play like that. You can hear me playing that second just single note, but it doesn't have a pluck on it, because if I turn this off, you can hear that pluck. If I turn this off, if I turn it back on, you can hear it sounds smoother. So there were some notes in there, like, let's see, this note where I felt like he did that. Like he kind of just played an accidental note. Anyway, that's kind of getting into the weeds of why I did that. Legato. The envelope 1, I have a bit of release on here. Envelope 2, short again, assigned to the low 24 filter with this cutoff at around 494 and about 15 modulation is the modulation. I don't know what the 15, that parameter I would call. Resonance is 25, drive is turned up 13. I only have this oscillator A, so the filter is only on for the oscillator A. And 3 voices of unison, but this detune is like almost non-existent. And this is just because I felt like maybe these also were run through a chorus effect. And that chorus effect on the Juno, I think is pretty, it could have been like maybe the chorus effect from the Juno because it's pretty distinct. And so I was just trying to achieve something that sounded a bit wider, but not as like detuned as if I were to have this up higher. You can hear a bit more of that detuning coming through the noise. Whereas now, it sounds more like a chorus effect. If I take this unison all the way to 1, but I felt like it's a bit wider in the actual track. Then the effects I added on like a compressor. So I'll take these off. To flatten out the sound a bit more with this compressor, and then the EQ, I felt like there was like no low end at all. And that's why I have this Q up pretty high. To get that sound, like it almost sounds kind of like a Rhodes, where you have a bit of a boost in this. Where do I have that boost? Around like 300 to 400 hertz to get that tone. So that's kind of like it for the keys. Pretty simple with the keys. So those are kind of like some of the main elements of listening to that song that I heard, especially in that like little clip that is kind of going viral on TikTok. I believe he has like a version called the VHS version, which he just like distorts everything a lot. But the cleaner version, this is kind of what I'm basing these sounds off of. And then if you did want to like distort everything, you could just group these all together and distort them all with the drums. I have these keys and bass right now, they're grouped and they're just, I have them sidechained. That is how you make some of the sounds in $1 Million Baby by Tommy Richman. I will put these presets in my Patreon if you do want to grab them. If you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and give it a like, and also please subscribe to my channel if you are not yet subscribed. And if you'd like to check out any of my Serum preset packs, head on over to store.samsmyers.com.